this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football. So tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
This is Tab Ramos from Inside American Soccer, and this summer, Topgolf is turning into the ultimate soccer destination. They've got a new soccer-themed game you can play with your group, exclusive food and drink items. They've even installed full-size soccer goals so you can try to hit golf balls right into the net. And every match all summer long will be on throughout the venue. And if you want to keep the fun going all summer, you can get the Topgolf Summer Fun Pass, which lets you play every single day and bring up to 5 guests every visit. Get yours now at topgolf.com/funpass.
This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 1106 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, thanks for tuning in. Before getting to the mailbag questions this week, I wanted to remind you to check out the Late Round Draft Guide. It's filled with game theory talk, ways to spot breakouts and busts, draft strategy for 2026, players to target, players to avoid, and so much more. It'll be out on July 10th, but you can pre-order now at a discount. Just check it all out over on lateround.com. The first question this week is from Chris via the Late Round Members Hub. It says, "Hey JJ, the new site looks awesome. Thanks. My question is, why is Tyler Shuck ranked significantly higher in redraft Superflex ranks than Dynasty? I know he's older than your typical second-year player, but that still feels counterintuitive to me. Thank you." So first off, I'll say what I've said before on this show about Superflex season-long rankings, and note that I really don't like them at all. I don't think people should blindly draft off of Superflex rankings, because every redraft Superflex league is going to have a totally different economy and how they value quarterbacks. With Dynasty, at least there's a market component that you're playing into. We can look at sites like Keep Trade Cut to see what the general market is for a quarterback. With season-long Superflex leagues, that really doesn't matter. More than anything else, in those drafts, in those season-long Superflex drafts, you need to be reactive to what's going on in that quarterback position. So if you're looking at my Superflex season-long rankings and comparing them one-to-one with Dynasty ones, I don't think that's a smart idea. Just for those reasons alone. But people consistently ask me for season-long Superflex rankings. That's why I provide them. And I do my best to properly value quarterbacks, even though I don't think there's one single way to value them. But look, I have Tyler Shuck as QB 15 right now in season long. I have him around QB 19 in Dynasty. Now, I could argue him a little bit higher in Dynasty, but that's technically where my rankings have him right now. This has come up countless times in the show in the past with a number of different young players. But I don't automatically have a young player ranked higher in Dynasty versus redraft, because the cost to acquire that player is completely different in those two formats. Like right now with Tyler Shuck, I think we'd all agree that he's not locked in as a starter for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. We're not quite there yet. I'm optimistic. I actually think he was better than Cam Ward last year as a rookie. But we're still talking about an older prospect who went outside the first round. He's got the system around him. He could put up some really great fantasy numbers, but it's no guarantee that he's the starter beyond this season. In redraft, that doesn't really matter. I don't care about what happens in 2027 with Tyler Shuck. So I don't have to play the downside game or worry about the downside at all. The downside for Tyler Shuck literally doesn't matter when we're specifically looking at 17 games in 2026. Technically 16 in a fantasy season. And I'm talking about career-long downside. So that changes where I'm going to rank a player, because I'm trying to recognize the range of outcomes here. I recognize that Shuck could be really good, but it can also go south. And that balances out into his dynasty ranking. But I don't care nearly as much if it goes south in season long, because there are more ways to make up for that mistake, even in a Superflex format. Season long leagues are shallower. There's more on the waiver wire. And again, we're not worried long term here. Shuck is probably going to be a decent fantasy asset, even if he doesn't really hit as a real-life passer, because he has volume, there's a good environment there, and there's rushing potential. It's like when Justin Fields was starting. I'm not saying that Tyler Shuck is Justin Fields, but hear me out. I was never ultra high on Fields in Dynasty because the passing numbers were always questionable, which means there was always a risk that he could lose his job. In redraft, though, as long as he was starting, he was generally giving you good fantasy numbers. He was giving you a good floor-ceiling combo. I didn't really care about what would happen with Justin Fields beyond that given year. Malik Willis is in a very similar boat right now, too. We genuinely have no idea how well Malik Willis is going to perform as a starter. But there's zero doubt in my mind that his dynasty value is a lot more volatile right now than his redraft value. His redraft value in single quarterback leagues is just a late round pick. Even in superflex leagues, it's not that bad from a season-long perspective. If it doesn't work out, you can just dump him in a single quarterback league. In a superflex league, if you're really worried about the floor, you can platoon him. Get a third quarterback. Get like an Aaron Rodgers type. In Dynasty Superflex, if you look at keep, trade, cut, you have to give up a player like Christian Watson to get Malik Willis. That's not insignificant. And it's a long-term deal. I remember the same conversation on this show about Gabe Davis back in the day. I had Gabe Davis ranked way higher in redraft than I did in Dynasty after he came off that crazy playoff performance after his second year. In redraft, he was going in like rounds 4 through 6 that year. I wasn't high or low on him, but I saw a scenario where the ceiling was actually there. But like a 4th to 6th round pick in redraft is not the most significant investment in the world. You can easily win a league championship if your 5th round pick doesn't work out. The waiver wire in a redraft league is a lot more fruitful. But the Dynasty community was treating Gabe Davis like a breakout was going to happen. I couldn't get there because there was a very scary floor, which is what we ended up seeing. Basically, all this comes down to this time frame that we're analyzing in these different formats. I'll be far more aggressive in redraft because it's an easier format to fix your mistakes in. And there are fewer consequences for being overly aggressive, especially if you're talking about late round picks. In Dynasty, being reckless with your evaluations can lead you down a scary path for years to come. So you have to weigh the downside risk more. Of course, there's upside too. And I'm trying to weigh that as well. But the downside to upside calculation is just different in Dynasty than it is in season long. And that's why Tyler Shuck is ranked slightly lower in Dynasty than he is in redraft for me right now. This next question is from Bilodeau Ryan on Blue Sky. It says, for redraft, can you talk about exposure rates? I do 10 leagues a year. My worst year was when I had too many certain players. Is there a rough percentage you don't want to surpass based on their average draft position? Last year, I didn't allow myself to go above 50% and did well. Is it more important early rounds than late? Well, I'd first make sure I wasn't crediting my success in fantasy football to simple exposure rates. I'm sure if you had 90% Jackson Smith and Jigba last year, you would have done very, very well. Even if you were at 90%, because he hit in a big way. But there's no right or wrong answer to this, because it comes down to how you generally want to manage your teams and how much risk you want to take on. If you're risk averse, then you'll want lower exposure. If you don't care, then have at it. The one thing I'll say, though, is that you'll want to mostly diversify your early round selections, especially rounds 1 to 3, where we see by far the highest hit rates. Messing those up can really hurt your fantasy team. And if you get the same player over and over again from that range, and then he doesn't work out, or if he gets hurt, you're screwed. So I generally won't have a player in that area of the draft over like 25% or so, if I were to give you a rough estimate. But beyond that, looking at the later round picks, you should feel more comfortable having certain guys on a lot of teams. The hit rates for late round picks is really, really small. And in managed redraft leagues, which is what you're referring to here, you can make up for those mistakes, like I was just saying with Tyler Shuck. We're not talking best ball. So if you draft like Jonah Coleman everywhere, and it's clear that he's just not him, you just drop him, and it really doesn't matter for your bottom line, even if you have like 80% Coleman. Hit rates that late are tiny to begin with. I worry about this much more when we're talking about early round picks. But in the end, it's just personal preference. I think 10 leagues is enough where you do want to be cognizant of overall exposure, though. This next question is from Ethan via the Members Hub. It says, Hey JJ, thanks for all the hard work. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Emeka Egbuka. Do you think his early season production was a fluke, or was his late season drop-off mostly due to injuries, both his and Baker's and other factors? With Mike Evans gone and Chris Godwin aging, the window is wide open for him to step up as the undisputed wide receiver 1 and get all the targets he needs to be the guy. Do you buy him taking the leap this season, or are there more layers to his progression that I'm probably missing? So I wrote about Egbuka in the late round prospect guide because in that guide, there are year 2 profiles. You can still get that guide over on lateround.com. But the first thing I did with Egbuka this offseason was see if we've ever seen this kind of split in the past, where a rookie started off so hot and then just fell off. And the answer was not really. We know season-long numbers are going to give us the most signal anyway, because there's a larger sample size. And he had good full season numbers. A 1.75 yards per route run rate, a target share of almost 24%. He had the second most first downs in last year's class. Like, regardless of how it came together, it still came together for Emeka Egbuka. To answer your question super directly, it's a little bit of both. Egbuka was playing out of his mind week 1 through 5 last year. Through those games, he was by far first in the NFL in yards on deep ball targets. And for what it's worth, 76% of his targets were deemed catchable at that point in time. He was probably going to regress in some way. It's just that he regressed to a 50% catchable targets rate, which is super low. And get this, from weeks 1 through 5, Egbuka had 8 receptions on 20 plus air yard throws. From week 6 through the end of the year, he had 11. Just 3 more deep ball receptions and 7 more games. And he finished with almost 150 fewer yards on those plays. He just wasn't getting it done via those big plays. We'll never know the exact reason for this. I think injuries to both guys, Egbuka and Baker, that made it difficult for Egbuka to sustain what he was doing, or at least regress to a reasonable mean. But through it all, I look at his year 2 model score, I look at his market score, I look at his season-long numbers, and I look at him as a player. How he played in year 1 and how he looked as a prospect. I think the body of work is there for him to have a great second season. I just wish that he was a little bit cheaper so I could get a ton of exposure. He's going in a range of the draft where I can make a great argument for a lot of wide receivers. If you listen to Becoming a Best Ball Bro, then you've heard me talk about that. I love that range of wide receivers. But that love does include Emeka Egbuka. This next one's from Shane from the Members Hub. It says, what am I missing or not understanding about the outlook on the Eagles offense for this year? A.J. Brown is gone, but the new OC and some potential depth added to the roster, can it really get worse than last year, or is this more of the market digesting uncertainty? Look, I'm with you, Shane. I don't think you're missing anything, and I think Jalen Hurts is probably the most mispriced higher-end quarterback right now. And as you heard earlier this week, Market Score thinks the exact same way. Jalen Hurts has been starting for the Eagles for 5 seasons now, so since 2021. When looking at those 5 seasons, not only was Hurts' points per game average below 20 for the first time last year, but the team's EPA per play was dead last. Their rushing EPA per play was below 0 for the first time. Their success rate on the ground was dead last. Their yards per play was dead last. I mean, the Eagles had gone through plenty of changes offensively during Hurts' time as starter, including a season without A.J. Brown. And they were better in that season by most metrics. A.J. Brown is still a really good player, so it's hard to just simply replace that. But I do like the guys they added in Stowers and Mekhi Lemon. And I don't think that we can downplay the change in offensive coordinator and what that might do. Kevin Patullo was so bad last year. The routes he had the wide receivers running were beyond basic. There wasn't as much motion. There wasn't that much RPO work. It was a really bad and boring offense. So I'm optimistic that things are going to turn around for them. I like Devontae Smith where he goes. I love Jalen Hurts where he goes. And I like Saquon in that 1-2 turn area. And I'm at least optimistic that Mekhi Lemon can fit in and be productive too. So this is definitely an offense that I want to buy into. The last question is from Casey from the Members Hub. It says, hey JJ, the fantasy community seems to be pretty split on Ladd McConkey. While some are in love, many have very real reasons for doubting him at his ADP. Last season was a disappointment. He might not be on the field in the Chargers' 2 tight end sets, and it's not a guarantee that Keenan Allen won't rejoin the team this season. You also mentioned in the last episode that there were some concerning trends in his data that you were working on for the draft guide. My question is, Why are you still in on Ladd? Huge fan of your work and new member. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Casey. So I don't think the Chargers are going to sit Ladd McConkey in 2 tight end sets, or at least very often. He's too talented of a player for that. Yes, his 2025, definitely a disappointment. But it's not like other wide receivers on that team dominated per route run while Ladd was just really bad. He was in the same vicinity as Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen last year in yards per route run. He led the team in end zone targets. He had a 21% target share. It wasn't all doom and gloom. The note that you're talking about related to trends is that yes, when looking at previous season per route run data, it is predictive. Yards per route run, targets per route run, first downs per route run. And his first downs per route run mark last year was really, really bad. It was just 6.2%. And historically, since 2014, which is where my ADP data dates back to, but historically, we've had 27 wide receivers ranked past wide receiver 12 and before wide receiver 37 who qualify here. So wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s. 27 of them with 200 or more routes run in the previous season with a first downs per route run rate below 7%. Of those 27 players, they underperform versus ADP expectation on average by over 2 PPR points per game. That's very bad. Only one of them exceeded that expectation by 2 or more PPR points per game. So only one of them outperformed where they were being drafted by 2 or more PPR points per game. And that's just expected points per game based on where they were drafted. I know I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I want you guys to really wrap your head around this. And actually, I just talked about him, but Emeka Egbuka is actually part of that list too. He had a low first downs per route run rate last year. But I'm just bullish on the Chargers offense. I think there's a legit chance that it's very good. I think I've cooled off slightly on Ladd because his ADP has been rising and the things that I discovered in the guide this year. And I talked myself into Quentin Johnson a little bit more. But I think Ladd belongs in that amazing tier of wide receivers in that like round 3 to round 5 range, where there are so many upside players to choose from. Because we can't forget, back after year 1, Ladd McConkey was super, super legit. I don't think we should only look at his previous season numbers, even if a lot of them are predictive. And look, this is where market score can really help us. And his market score is not as bad as you'd think. He's ranked right below T. Higgins as wide receiver 17, despite all of those poor previous season numbers. Market score thinks his overall ADP is on point, that he's being drafted at the end of round 3 into round 4, and that's where he should be drafted, according to that metric. His top comp for market score is Chris Godwin in 2019, where he scored almost 20 PPR points per game. But there are definitely some questionable players on that comp list too, which speaks to the volatility that I'm talking about here. So yes, there's definitely some concern. And yes, I do think I've cooled slightly about Ladd McConkey compared to like a month ago, where he was a little bit cheaper. But I want pieces of this offense, and despite his down season, I still think Ladd McConkey has a lot of talent. His rookie season doesn't just happen by mistake. That's it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you get subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Late Round QB. Thanks for listening this week, everyone. Greatly appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch you next week.
Running a business shouldn't feel like surviving a software group project. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales. And somehow, none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in, an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, all in one powerful platform. No messy integrations, no bouncing between tabs. And best of all, no spreadsheets. Stop managing software and start managing your business with one unified system. Try for free today at odoo.com/iHeartRadio. That's odoo.com/iHeartRadio.
Okay, laundry stinks. Literally. I mean, you could just keep buying new underwear. Not that I've ever done that. Or maybe sort your clothes into piles based on how re-wearable or filthy they are. Or just use Arm & Hammer Deep Clean. It's made for real-life stinks and stains. So even if you don't do laundry the, quote, right way, Deep Clean will knock it out. I mean, it is from the #1 liquid detergent brand that tackles more loads than any other. Come clean with Arm & Hammer Deep Clean. #1 claim based on total wash loads sold.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.